a practicing Catholic liberal and a Jew, both successful media personalities who both value career and killing it and also the family, walk into a bar that is Harrison Butker's commencement speech. Everybody welcome my fave, Sonni Abatta. She is the host of We Gotta Talk, super accomplished, like I said, news personality, media personality, mom of three, outspoken liberal, and a little walking but jack of all trades in and of herself, being a, like I said, a practicing Catholic who has liberal values, who values her motherhood. So, Sonni, this is obviously the topic that just keeps on giving, and it's really triggering people and hitting a nerve. And I know
It's
you
like,
got a lot to say about
oh,
it, girl.
I have so many thoughts. Hearing you list all of those things, it's funny that the world tells you you like cannot be all of that. We are in such
Right?
a world these days where you have to completely abide by a party line or a sort of belief system where you can only do these bullet points and you can't exist outside of that box. And so I think that's what we're running up against with the speech is that like either it's on one side and it's he's the worst person in the world, or on the other side, and this is the most evangelical, perfect, holy thing I've ever heard.
Yep.
And as we know, Taylor, the world lives in the middle usually, like we do. And
And
yeah, can't wait to
isn't isn't that sad? I mean, I thought it even as I was saying it in and of itself that it's such an oxymoron that you would be a practicing Catholic and also a liberal with
Mhm.
those with some not
Right.
extreme woke, which I know you have a problem with, values, and it's so sad, and it's what I'm all about, which is being more things than one, which our society breaks its brain over the idea of being more things than one, right? But and especially as women, which we're going to talk
Right.
about, which is my calling up in his pitch. But speaking of being in boxes, right? The first thing I kind of want to tackle with you today is the fact that in my mind, look, this is a guy who obviously has extreme,
Hmm.
conservative Catholic biblical viewpoints and values, which is how a lot of people in this country think. So in this commencement speech, a lot of it to me is very extreme. He's not only talking about women and their
Right.
calling, which we're going to get to, but he also tackles things like IVF and how pride
Oh.
is the deadly sin, and surrogacy, and how women
Hmm.
have been told all of these diabolical lies insinuating these are all wrong and immoral and sinful, right? Which in my mind is extreme, and it's the extreme opposite to the extreme woke. So
Right.
being a practicing Catholic who is liberal, take it away, Sonni.
Okay, so I feel like every religion has its set of nuances. So I want to kind of set the stage for what I perceive to be his position based on what he said and where I am. Because, like any religion, our beliefs exist sort of on a spectrum. And there are Catholics who are super by the book, by the doctrine, by the both Old and New Testament. They are believing the literal word of God, etc. And there are people like cafeteria Catholics, which is what I am. I'm a pro-choice Catholic, which I couldn't speak about for years, having worked in traditional media. I consider myself a very classical liberal person. I believe in the rights of people to exist and love and marry who they want to. And I have been able to still live under the Catholic umbrella, maybe because I am technically breaking doctrine, but also, and maybe more importantly, because I believe that within every religious system, we have to start giving flexibility to people's belief systems, and not just because we're trying to modernize the religion, which is something that people really, really look down upon who are super traditional or super conservative in their beliefs. But there needs to be an element of compassion and empathy and understanding that I just personally don't believe the strictest version of Catholicism allows for. And in this speech, he's talking about like the traditional Latin mass. Like if you're a Catholic, you know what that is. It is a man speaking in Latin on for an hour to an hour and a half, and you have no idea what's being said, and you just go along. Like Catholicism is a very dogmatic, sort of ritualistic. Like a mass
Mm-hmm.
is you do the same thing at the same
Mm-hmm.
time, you say the same thing. The homily is the only thing that changes. It's like like the cream and the Oreo. Everything else is the same. So he to me seems like a super, super, super conservative Catholic. He even
Yes.
referenced like Benedictine being the only true Catholic college. I'm married to a guy who went to Notre Dame. They're technically a Catholic college, but they're obviously too liberal for him. So yeah, I just
Mm-hmm.
want to set the stage because like people hear Catholic, it gets a bad name because there are a lot of really really ultra sort of conservative people who are part of it, just like any religion. And I sort of consider myself to be more of the cafeteria Catholic version of it.
Right. And you find yourself again, and I talked about this in my episode about this yesterday, but where most common sense thinking people, regardless of
Right.
religious beliefs, lie. And that's where, you know, I'm a new resident in the Bible Belt. So for me, the extreme views, again, it's like we're still doing this of, you know, homosexuality is a sin.
Right.
The egg and the sperm have to meet. IVF, you know, through a man and a woman, through holy matrimony and surrogacy and IVF is bad. It's like we're really doing this. So again, that's where, you know, and again, free speech is free speech, right? So
Mm.
I said this yesterday. It's like
Yeah.
this is the guy's opinion, and this reflects how people in this country do think. But for me, again, it's one counterculture extreme
Mhm.
swinging from the other.
Yeah, I kind of went on a little bit of a rant on my Instagram stories yesterday about this because, like you said at the beginning, multiple things can exist. So the backlash in particular to him saying that his wife's highest calling was a mom and a wife, it just really doesn't offend me. I was kind of confused as to why it is a really polarizing thing to admit the fact that there are some women whose greatest calling, whose truest form of alignment on this planet is being a mother. Now, was that I wanted to be a mom, but I wasn't chasing it down since I was 18 years old. I had a thriving career, my own home, my own health care, like everything before I met
Mhm.
my husband. And I said yesterday on my stories, I just don't, what I don't like about this backlash to it, and let's be honest, the backlash came from all of the liberal outlets out there. There were a couple of
Mhm.
things that were missing. Number one, the context. He is an extremely traditional Catholic man speaking at an extremely traditional Catholic
That's what I
university.
said.
Are you
That's
going
what
to tell us?
I
Yeah,
said.
I mean, like, are we going to say this about
Yes.
another religion? Like, would we deny anyone of any other religious belief system the ability to go into a protected space within their own belief system and preach or talk? No. And his sin is that he's a good looking white man right now, and people hate white men right now. That's his greatest sin, is that he is saying bad things being a white man. Like, I kind of am like, dude, have fun with this. I mean, he walked right into it, but you have to consider the context. He said this speech to uproarious applause. He wasn't getting
Wow.
eggs thrown at him and getting people booing him. The people liked what he said. Now, would I be there standing on my feet with a standing ovation, hearing some of the things he said? Probably not. But I also believe that there can be people in the world who can believe what he's saying. We're not talking an extreme religious belief here. Now, I'm going to kind of leave the LGBTQ stuff to the side. I'm speaking specifically to
About women.
the women issue, like the issue about women finding fulfillment in marriage and motherhood. That's okay with me. That is okay. I know these women, I'm sure you do too, that have longed for motherhood since a young age. They knew, I want to be a mom when I grow up. I want to be a
Sure.
wife. I can't, that wasn't me, but I love a world where
Right.
that woman can exist. Go do that. Find your man. I love that for you. I didn't love it
So
for me, but go have fun.
have fun with that.
Have at
Have
it.
fun with that. So let's pivot to that because this, again, for me, a lot of it comes down to I love how you brought up freedom of religious practice. I talked about that yesterday and freedom of choice. And it is, I will say, like to put a button on, you talk about a lot of these liberal mainstream outlets. Like, again, do you have freedom of speech or not? Do you have freedom of religion or not? Like you do or you don't. And I personally, again, I don't agree with this guy. I don't
Mhm.
agree with these ideologies, but I love that we're in a, you know, a thriving democracy and a free land where people can do this. And ironically, these liberal outlets forget this. Like I would rather be in a melting pot of all these
Right.
different practices and ideas. And it's like, you're exactly right. They go in on this and like bash this. And yet, like I talked yesterday about a USA Today piece, a sports writer who completely railed
Mhm.
in on this. And especially when it comes to religion, it's like, okay, it just, you have to look at these people, even the writers and the outlets, like they have a slant and a narrative and where they're coming from. It reminds me
Right.
just to again, button the religious freedom thing, like the Teen Vogue editor who writes like a glowing profile of Ilhan Omar's, our Congress's biggest out anti-Semitic's daughter for protesting at getting arrested at Columbia, the whole thing, right? But they get a glowing review and yet bash stuff like this. So again, it's like freedom of religion or not, like pick one. But when you talk
Right.
about choice, okay, So this is what you were getting at too. It's the idea that I'm in the same boat as you, that we shouldn't undervalue women who do choose motherhood and marriage and all that as their
Right.
highest calling. Again, in my mind, it's a very kind of puritanical, biblical. It's the connection with you and the big guy, right? Like
Hmm.
we shouldn't undervalue that. And some would argue, like in because nor do I think obviously that we should undervalue all of the hard work and struggle and fight that women have had for their
Hmm.
livelihoods and passions and careers, right? But it's gone so far that way that now maybe we do hate on women who choose being homemakers. Again,
We
I would
do.
never last a day in that
Yeah.
life. I personally, and I'll get to this, find a bigger, for me, have a different purpose that drives me. Um, but what do you think about that, right? Undervaluing
Yeah.
people who
And you
choose
can,
that.
I will tell you this is a fact. I had a child, I had a wonderful career in TV news and traditional media. I was an anchor, I was a reporter, I was
Mm-hmm.
covering some of the biggest stories that were nationwide news. I had a very wonderful team. I love the people I work with. The moment I became a mother, and I had to take time away to go pump. I remember one specific instance where I had to pump in the middle of breaking news. We were waiting for a verdict to come down in the George Zimmerman case. And I got an earful from a male producer about having to leave set when my breasts were literally ready to explode.
Mm-hmm.
And you do get looked down on as a mom these days. And it's unfortunate. And
Right.
the one form of discrimination that is still somehow okay in our world is misogyny. And it is evident. And I'm not a woman who's out there claiming that the world is out to get her. We have made incredible strides. I am so grateful for the feminist movement. I think priorities have shifted since that original movement. I'm grateful for the work they did and the foundation they laid for me to be able to pursue my career. So I think it's important to say that. However, there is still very much a bias against motherhood. And that's why when someone gets up on stage and said, hey, it's actually a good thing to be a mom, I'm kind of like, yeah, because you know what? I'm just as smart. I'm just as driven. I'm probably better at my job. It unlocked a whole new level of multitasking for
Mm-hmm.
me. And so I guess I was reacting yesterday to this concept that as soon as the word mother is thrown in, you're automatically looked at as someone who's unambitious, incapable, so concerned, so brooding at home with your babies that you're incapable of existing in the professional world. So sometimes it feels good to have someone say, you know what? Moms are important. And Taylor, if that were the last thing I did, if someone removed everything else from my life except my children and my husband, I would still be doing just as important work as I consider
Mm-hmm.
myself to be doing professionally. Like I do hate when people dog on it. It always tends to come from a more liberal perspective. It's looked down on these women who aspire to, who call it a vocation, which I think is a word he used yesterday.
Yeah, he did. Yeah.
It's unfortunate, really, because not only can you coexist someone like me and have both a thriving professional and personal life, but even if that were the last thing I did, it would still be worthy work. And there is something to be said. We can go on all day, and I am grateful for this world we live in where there are so many options, but no one can deny the power of a solid family foundation.
Mm-hmm.
Someone to be raised in the loving arms of a two-parent family, that's a good thing. It's I know that
Mm-hmm.
sounds crazy. We're supposed to say it's better to be. It is
Mm-hmm.
easier, and I will tell you this as a person very close to many single parents and as a married person. It's okay to do normal things. It's okay to grow
Mm-hmm.
up and have a couple of kids and just get married.
Sure.
Like, you don't have to exist outside of that. And I guess I was just sort of reacting to that because I've experienced not only discrimination because I became a mother and I was looked at by one particular person, at least, as a completely different employee, but also because I think it's important to hold space for the women who want that, assuming they're not hurting anyone else and trampling
Sure.
on anyone else's rights. It's it's a worthy vocation. If that's your jam, go do it. Go do it.
Your story about the pumping thing really strikes a chord because for me, again, it's about empowering women to
Right.
be all things and the multifaceted powerhouses that we are. Like, my ultimate fantasy is to have it all. And I've always
Mhm.
said that from the beginning. And that's what we're going to get to, the last like juicy part of this is, what do women want, and the innate part of all of this. But like for me, I'm so inspired by the women who overcome obstacles and do have it all and achieve
Mm.
like their highest dreams and goals. And I just recently watched a documentary on Bethany Hamilton, the woman
Mm,
who, the soul surfer, right, who infamously had her, she's a surfer, pro surfer who had in a shark attack, her arm
mm.
bit off. And despite that challenge, she went on to compete and still thrive and, you know, overcome that huge obstacle. And she went on to like unexpectedly have a child. And there's a scene, and it moved me so much, where this woman literally has one arm, is like training like she's Hulk Hogan, is out
Oh my
on the,
gosh.
like out on the ocean about to tackle like the most insurmountable wave, and in between she's breastfeeding on the boat. Like I just was
Gives me
like,
the
that is
chills.
fucking
It
gold.
gives me the
Yes.
chills. You know what? And like that
Yeah.
is what it comes back to, is an appreciation for women and
Yeah.
the divine femininity and the actual power we have. And I know you talk about this on your podcast a lot, which I love, this intrinsic power we have to be the carers, the nurturers, beautiful, draw people in with our
Yeah.
charm and our like. I love that women can exist in a multifaceted way. And it just,
Yeah.
you know, and to ignore that motherhood is a part of that is just willfully ignorant. To go on and say like our society can exist fine without, I don't think that's true. I don't think our society as we know it can exist without good mothers. And I will go on
That's a
record
really
saying
good
that that
point.
is, I think a good woman, a good mother is the foundation of a successful society. The foundation on top of, like on top of which our children grow, the morals, the
Hmm.
values, the things we teach them, that
Hmm.
starts somewhere. And I
Yeah.
think it's really disingenuous when we say, yes, I'm so proud of what I accomplished outside of the home. And I will tell my daughters, you better believe you have to have your own. I say this all the time, your own
I say this
your
all
own
the time.
job, your own healthcare, your own home. If you check those
Hmm.
boxes, you get my blessing to get married, even my son. But yeah, I mean, I want to hold the broader definition of femininity as
Yeah.
something that allows room for people who choose that. There is
That's
nothing wrong
great.
with the woman who chooses that.
So here, Sonny, is where it gets a little murky though. This is the last, this is where it gets juicy,
Ooh, nervous. Okay, go on.
because this is where the nuance that people are overlooking, right, in what he
Mm,
said, and why I think it's striking such a nerve. And I love what he said, by the way. Before we hopped on, Sunny was like being liberal. She's like, it's just, you know, why do they gotta shit on mothers? Like, these are my people. Like, this is the shit that drives me crazy, right? Which I
yeah,
love.
it's crazy.
But this is where I can see, when you really read between the lines of what he's saying, where I ain't up on the stitch of what he's saying. So here's the thing: is that if you really look at it, he's insinuating, he's not just saying, look, there's nothing wrong with choosing to be a mother and a wife, and that's your highest calling. The problem that I have with it, and that I
Hmm.
think people who look at this closely have with this, is that he insinuates that this is what most women not only do, but should want. So I'm going to read
Yeah.
exact quotes. He says, some of you women may go on to lead successful careers in the world, but I would venture to guess that the majority of you are most excited about your marriage and the children you will bring into this world. And he says, I think it is you, women, who have had the most diabolical lies told about you, thinking about all of the promotions and titles you're going to get in your career, right? So
Yeah, he had no
obviously,
calls to action for men. Did you notice that? He
well,
wasn't
that,
asking men to sacrifice. He was just saying, listen,
yes.
ladies, have a bunch of,
And
yeah. So I get that. Yes,
yes,
yes.
and that's something, of course, at large, that we're always dictating a women's role, what they should do, how should they be, like, where's this convo about men? Like, I'm seeing
Hmm.
tumbleweed, right? But
Hmm.
this idea of like, ladies, I would venture out to guess that this is actually what most of you do and should want. Now, this is where, because
Hmm.
you talk about the idea of being a career woman, and also want having the lived, not just the fantasy, but living out, want, you know, having a family, and those, you know, those traditional sort of values. Now, I know a lot of, and I'm sure you do too, I know a lot of high powered business entrepreneurial kick ass women who would abandon that career if it meant giving them this dream of a family. Me, I'm not in that boat personally, but I
Hmm.
could understand that. Then on the other end of it, though, let's be real. You have the whole thing of a lot. How many women do we know who are stay at home moms who have made this their lives
Hmm.
and are absolutely stir crazy, miserable, looking for purpose? Like, there's desperate housewives, right?
Yeah, that's a
So
term for a reason. Yes.
So, Sunny, I understand that it's an innate thing in women, of course. Again, being someone who has this fantasy of my own and who does have that as a priority of something that I want down the line. And I always even say, I can't wait to be pregnant. I think that I'm absolutely going to love that experience. I always say that. And it's something that I really do prioritize of having experienced in this lifetime. Like, I will not be okay if I don't experience that. But do you think that it's what most women want deep down?
You know, it is impossible to answer. I think it is okay if you want it, and I think it's okay if you don't want it. I do want to go on record and say I feel like I need to be explicit about this. Like I said at the beginning, the version of Harrison Butker's Catholicism is not the doctrine or the word or the world that I live by. And I do strongly condemn the things that he said about IVF, the Pride months. Like, this is not, like I said, I just want to be clear about that, because I know people are going to listen to this and say, listen to that turbo conservative, as if it's even bad to be conservative, but whatever. I mean, whatever. But I want to be clear, because when we talk about what women want or what he said that was right or wrong, there's so many versions of people's reality. And this is the experience that I know, having had children and still remaining friends with a lot of people who live their lives differently. The world I wake up to is vastly different from the world that everyone else wakes. We are in our own unique realities. The important thing is to meet people where they're at, like, if you feel strongly that someone should not be saying the things he's saying, then you should. I promise you, the people that were at that college were probably mostly okay with a lot of this, you know, and I say it with an eye roll
That's
as a
what I
Catholic.
said. Like,
I
let's take
mean,
it right
let's
for what
take
it
it,
is.
let's consider the context.
Mm-hmm.
And so women can and should want whatever version of their lives most fits them. I will say this: you can have it all as a woman. You cannot have it all at once. You cannot have a thriving travel career and a thriving family. I'm sorry to say it. No one told me. I wish someone told me. Like, there's a buffet of misconception that's kind of been laid before us. As I'm an elder millennial. I'm like the borderline between Gen X and millennial. I'm a 1981 baby. And I wish someone would have told me, Sonny, you can have the job, the great job, and the great family, but you cannot have them at once. And so anytime I have the opportunity to say that, I try to. It can be wonderful. It just can't be 100% on both. So I feel like, don't drive yourself into the ground feeling like you can have it all at once if you're a woman, because that's adding undue pressure on a completely impossible scenario.
Mm-hmm.
But what he got totally wrong, Taylor, and was the tone of his speech. It's exactly what you sort of zeroed in on, was not necessarily the acknowledgement that women can want motherhood or whatever, but the way that he said it, in a way to make it seem like that was the only thing that women should have. Also, because he didn't call on men to change anything in their lives. If you're calling on a woman to give up her body, her life, her time, her career potential, you better be showing up as a man beyond what he called traditional masculine. Like, you better be showing up in a big way, because our sacrifice is tremendous as women and mothers. And I also don't agree with, like I said, the version of Catholicism that he is out there sort of preaching and discussing. I mean, he was saying, like,
Yeah.
you can't be both Catholic and pro-choice. Yes, you can. Hello. There are
Yeah.
many of us. God is particular about the way he
Right.
wants to be worshiped. Not my God. My God shows up in small daily acts of service and love. So I just want to make clear that this is like going one of the more extreme versions of my religion. So when people hear this, like, this isn't what most Catholics, I promise you, are thinking, or
Yeah.
how they're showing up in the world. It's really not. But to get back to your question, I encourage women to dream up the life you want. I will tell
Yeah.
you this: it's the partner you pick that matters most. Here's my advice then: don't pick someone like Harrison. I have a wonderful husband, and he's Catholic. He's not like that. And thank God there are nice men in the world who are willing to support both sides of women, the maternal side, the many sides, I should say, the
I
professional
love
side, and
that.
more. That's the challenge. You got
And
to find your person.
that's how I want to end this entire thing, because his speech sadly encapsulated everything you're talking about: being boxed in as a woman, as a Catholic, as a liberal. I posted a part of my episode yesterday to social media saying, I by no means agree with this guy, but let's take into consideration he's a Catholic at a Catholic college. Like,
Right.
it's par for the course. And I was getting called, oh, you're an Sonny, you know me, the people who listen to my show. I'm certainly not a wokey wokester liberal. by any means. And people are like, they'll put you automatically in camp. Oh, you liberal, why is this anti? You can't handle anything of what you don't agree. Like, you're just automatically put in a box. And all that goes to say, for me, being sometimes with topics like this that I'm so passionate about. I don't know if you find
Mhm.
this with your show, and that means so much to me, and that are my livelihood. It's like, how do I even put this into words? Because
Mhm.
it's like, where do I even begin, right? Being someone who is so passionate about being a woman and all of the things that we
Mhm.
can achieve and strive to be, in the multifaceted, dynamic, dimensional people that we are and what we offer. But I'll say this, it got me thinking about, even from my own experience, my boyfriend and I try, and he's everything you described. Like, go for this, biggest advocate.
Mhm.
And he and I, we have to work out things, right?
Mhm.
And he said to me multiple times, he said, if it comes down, and this is again me, someone who does fantasize about and want and prioritizes having a family down the line, right? In addition to what I build in my personal career. But he said to me many times, if you come, I know you. And if it came down to making things work out with us and having that family and all that, or achieving your goal and your dream and what you want to bring into this world and accomplish in the world, I know that you would choose the latter. And he doesn't even
Mhm.
say it in a judgmental way. That's how much he loves me and advocates for me and gets it, right? So again, that's just me.
Mhm.
But I really, like I said, at the end of the day, I want women to feel like they can go and be mothers. That's if that is their purpose and that's
Yeah.
what brings them fulfillment. But I also, they can go, and I want them to feel inspired to be thinkers and leaders and
Mhm.
entrepreneurs and
Yes.
scientists and engineers and doctors and lawyers, like all of these things. So for me, Sonni, this is kind of cheesy, but it's like, you're the embodiment. I'm so glad that I had you on
Oh,
today to talk about
thank
someone
you.
who is not only intellectually and religious and what you practice and what you live out in your day to day, but like always striving to be all of those things. It doesn't have to be in a box. It doesn't have to
Mhm.
be, one thing or the other. And so thank you for being like the walking embodiment of that. And that's what I
That's very
really want to
sweet.
leave women and men with, of being all things that you
Yes,
want to be.
let your women be who they want to be. And yeah, I reflect those same compliments right back to you. And I think supporting and uplifting women who show us all the different ways we can choose to live. And thank God we're in a free country, right? That's where
Yes,
it's
where
at.
we can't.
That's where it's
Exactly.
at. Yes.
Amen.
And
Amen
you
to
know,
that, church. Amen to
that
that, Sonni.
I'm starting my own religion. Yeah,
I would sign up. I would
I
sign up
love
for
it.
that.
You're
But
great,
yeah.
Taylor.
And you know what's so crazy too, Sonni? Last kind of thing on this is like, it kind of reflects your sentiment too, but you hear a lot of women who like go on to accomplish so much in their career, and then they went ahead and like became mothers, or like go
Yes.
back and forth and all that. And that's where
I,
it's at too,
It
I
is.
think.
And I will say this, just as sort of a parting thought, as someone I was never hesitant per se about motherhood, but I certainly didn't prioritize it as something that I needed to accomplish in my 20s or even early 30s. I was very go with the flow. I will say this. The world needs women. The world needs our multidimensionality. It needs our empathy. It needs our nuance. It needs our love and nurturing. And their qualities so intrinsic to the female experience and particularly to the motherhood experience that unlock a whole new level of care and compassion for the world. Like literally, there's nothing else you could do that would make you care more about the future than becoming a parent, because all of a sudden it's personal.
Mm-hmm.
So I encourage the women who are out there and listen, if motherhood is your highest calling, I send you all of the love and blessings. But if that motherhood could be intertwined with a profession or a position that could also bring some of that much needed nuance and empathy and care that we have as mothers into the world, then I encourage that even further,
Mm-hmm.
because there is a superpower that we have as women. And
Oh,
that's the world I want. That's the world I want,
yeah.
is where we have more influence on the policy
Yeah.
and the direction of
Yep.
things. Because I think that's where ultimate peace and success is at. I think we're the portals for that. That was so
It's
preachy,
so
but I
true.
believe
And
it.
no, it's true. And I personally, I always say this, like, I can't wait for that day. I can't wait to become a mom, because I think it's going to allow me to tap into a part of being a woman and a human being that I never would have even had any understanding of. Like, I think it's just going to open up a whole new dimension to existence. And I can't wait for that. But in the meantime, I'll say, like you said, if you see a Harrison Butker, if you're not about this, sermon he gave. If you see a Harrison Butker on your Hinge or your Tinder, girl, just swipe.
Just there
Like,
you go.
just swipe away.
We don't have to date or marry a Harrison. You know what? Harrison's not my speed. So, but if you love him, go for it.
Exactly. Sonni, thank you so much.
Thank you,
Appreciate you
Taylor.
always.
It's an honor to be on the show. Thank you.